When you think of great villains, who do you think of? Darth Vader? The Joker? Bowser? Well, me personally, when I think of the greatest villain of all time, there's only one name that comes to my mind. Griffith is a character from the manga series Berserk. Wait, sorry, wrong video. Next time, baby. This isn't a Berserk video, so let's focus on the subject of this video. My second favorite villain of all time, Ganondorf Dragmir. Yes, that is his actual last name. He's an incredibly underrated villain whose motivations and actions are truly evil. But why is that? Is Ganondorf truly just an evil man for the sake of it? No, he isn't. Ganondorf is the result of an ancient evil centuries before him. This evil created a cycle that would torment Ganon over and over. Eons of torture, eons of defeat. Upon diving deep into Ganondorf's life and many deaths, you begin to see a pattern form. Ego. Ganondorf knows about this ancient power housed within him. He believes it to be his birthright to rule, to conquer. He thinks that no one is as strong as him despite his numerous defeats. He lets his ego drive every decision that he makes, eventually resulting in his defeat every time. It could be argued that this ego roots back to the curse he was given, but either way, ego is what drives Ganondorf. There have been 3 total known iterations of Ganondorf throughout Zelda's long history. This video is going to cover the first and longest standing version, rooting all the way back from Ocarina of Time. But first, a word from our sponsor. The Violets of Amicus is an upcoming 2D action-adventure game, inspired by A Link to the Past and Breath of the Wild. You play as Aster, a young courier-turned-soldier, on a mission to save Velair from the ferocious Violets who have taken over the land. The game is packed with dungeons to solve, monsters to slay, and utilizes a unique merging mechanic to upgrade weapons. The Kickstarter is launching soon, so don't forget to follow Creation Mode Studios on their Kickstarter pre-launch page and try out the demo before February 15th. The link will be the first one in the description, and thank you so much to the Violets of Amicus for sponsoring this video. Without further ado, let's get into the story of the second greatest villain of all time, starting with eons before time had a name. There existed a man. This man went by the name of Demise. Demise existed in an era controlled by the golden goddess Hylia. Demise claimed himself to be a demon king, a title he took very seriously. He sought to overthrow Hylia and take over the world of Hyrule, but more importantly, the mystical power known as the Triforce. Hylia rallied the surface tribes of Goron, Kikwi, Magma, Perella, and ancient robots against Demise, eventually defeating the self-proclaimed demon king. Before his untimely defeat, Demise entrusts his top general Girahim to revive him. Girahim eventually succeeds in the task, sacrificing the reincarnation of Hylia, Zelda, to restore the fierce king. Demise is then confronted by a swordsman in green, wielding an upgraded form of the goddess sword Hylia had used to dispatch him prior. In a flash of rage, Demise battles with the swordsman, a Hylian named Link. Demise is once more defeated, embarrassed by an extension of the goddess. This defeat, no, this embarrassment, could not stand.
Extraordinary. You stand as a paragon of your kind, human. You fight like no man or demon I have ever known, though this is not the end. My hate never perishes. It is born anew, in a cycle with no end. I will rise again. Those like you, those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, they are eternally bound to this curse. An incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to walk the blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time.
Centuries pass. In the land now known as Hyrule, a civil war breaks out. When and why? Who knows? The only thing that matters is that during that civil war, 2 very important people are born. Near the end of the war, a Hylian named Link is born. But at the beginning, the only male Gerudo born for the next 100 years is born. The Gerudo baby is taken in by the twin Rova sisters Koma and Kotake and named Ganondorf. The war concludes as Ganondorf becomes a young man, officially taking the reins over the Gerudo Valley and introducing himself and establishing connections with the Hylian king of the time. Some more years pass, somewhere between 5 to 10 presumably, and Ganondorf begins to make his move. You see, Ganondorf didn't just have pure intentions in meeting the Hylian king. Growing up, he had heard rumors of the mythical Triforce, a gift from the goddess Hylia that if touched by a mortal, would grant any wish. Ganondorf seeks this power. He feels a pull to it. He needs it. Ganondorf knows that to attain this Triforce, he must first obtain the 3 spiritual stones held by the forest, volcano, and ocean spirits. So he uses the dark magic he had always been so adept with and sends the beastly Goma, King Dodongo, and Baronade to hunt for them. After a short time, however, he receives word that Goma has been felled by a mysterious Kokiri named Link. Link. Why was that name so familiar? No matter. This is a foil to his plan, but it could also be an opportunity. His monsters had located the mysterious spiritual stone, sure, but he still needed one thing that he had no idea how to achieve. He needed the mystical Ocarina of Time, held by the royal family in order to break the seal on the spiritual realm where the Triforce resides. Ganondorf had it on good authority that as he met with the King of Hyrule next, the Hylian Princess Zelda would be meeting with this Link. Over the last few years, Ganondorf knew that Princess Zelda had taken a dislike to him. She saw right through his facade and knew of his intentions. He knew that the two would conspire against him and theorized that the conspiration would end in Princess Zelda opening the Sacred Realm to wish upon it herself. While he was slightly wrong in the end, Ganondorf's assessment of the situation was almost entirely accurate. Events fall into place for the Gerudo's ruler, and after Link obtained the final stone, he makes his move. He kills the King of Hyrule, finally done with his subterfuge. He sets fire to Hyrule Castle, driving Princess Zelda and her assistant Impa out of Hyrule. Princess Zelda gives Link the Ocarina of Time, which he uses to unlock the Sacred Realm. Ganondorf goes to make a wish, at last, but is met with an unfortunate reality. Triforce had been split into 3 pieces. He was able to claim the Triforce of Power, but the Triforces of Courage and Wisdom were now held by Link and Zelda, respectively. Link having a piece was of no concern. He was housed within the Sacred Realm, and Ganondorf could pluck that from him whenever he pleased. Zelda, on the other hand, was completely MIA. Ganondorf was initially enraged, but his sick mind kicked into overdrive. He had known the tale of the 7 sages and presumed that's where Link would head to find the power to defeat him. One of the 7 sages, he already knew quite well. Zelda. He figured that Link would be able to get the first 6 with no trouble, though he would not make it easy for him. But when it came time for the 7th, Zelda would have no option but to reveal herself. Then he would strike. So he waited 7 years. 7 long years he waited in his castle above until Link finally emerged. Everything went according to his plan, and the chess game continued in his favor. Eventually, Princess Zelda revealed herself to be the thorn in his side known as Sheik, and so he struck, taking her as soon as he could, and subsequently making his biggest mistake. His ego gets to him. He feels unstoppable. So he challenges Link. He tells him to come to his castle and face him to prove his strength. But he underestimated the young hero. He didn't understand the extent of the power that Link possessed. And so he had won. It was inevitable after all. Unfortunately, he had been outplayed regardless. The 7 sages used their last resort. Led by Princess Zelda, the sages locked Ganondorf, now in his beastly Ganon form, into the corrupted Sacred Realm, which he now calls the Dark World. After a brief period of peace, an era known as the First Imprisoning War begins, a time when the doorway to the Sacred Realm was reopened. Hylians fought one another to claim the Triforce sealed with Ganondorf. Instead, an army of Ganon's monsters were able to flee the Dark World, wreaking havoc. The King of Hyrule sends the 7 sages of the Imprisoning War era to seal the Sacred Realm once more. This has the adverse effect of killing a large majority of the Hylian knights who had defended the sages, reducing their numbers to a mere handful. With this, the Imprisoning War ends, and Hyrule is thrust into an era of darkness. Eventually, Ganon forms yet another diabolical plan. He splits off a piece of his power and smuggles it into the light world. This portion of his power forms into a body and begins going by the name of the sorcerer Agahim. Agahim slowly approaches the King of Hyrule closely replicating his original plan in the first timeline. Eventually, Agahim gains enough political standing that he can get close enough to the king to murder him and brainwash the soldiers of Hyrule. He imprisons Zelda, not wanting to make the same mistakes he had in the past. But unfortunately, he is unaware of a new version of the hero who had stopped him in the past had reincarnated and saved Zelda from her prison. It's of no matter to Agahim, who attempts to ignore the problem, instead opting to go with his original plan, capturing all of the descendants of the sages, using them to free his primary form and the rest of his power. Agahim goes through with this, but is confronted by Link in the final stages of his plan. Just before the gate to the Dark World is open, Link defeats Agahim, with Agahim casting the hero into the corrupted world. Agahim immediately goes to his tower and sees his full power locked away in the form of Ganon. He begins a ritual to free the power and locks himself within the tower. Once more, Link barges in just before the ritual is complete and makes quick work of the puppet. Luckily for Ganon though, it was far too late. Ganon's main body is freed and prepares to wreak havoc upon Hyrule. Unluckily for Ganon, Link stands there, unfazed. The two battle, and Link eventually kills Ganon, bringing his tale to an end. Or so it would seem. Unbeknownst to Ganon, people were working behind the scenes to assist him. Who were these people? His adoptive parents, Koma and Kotake, reappear, dedicating the next years to his resurrection. After a needlessly complicated series of events, see here if you want more details, the twin Rova sisters light the three flames, reviving Ganon. Once more, due to Link's unfortunate timing, the ritual is interrupted, causing the sisters to sacrifice themselves to complete the resurrection. Due to this change, however, instead of the cunning man whose backup plan had backup plans, he is returned as a mindless beast, set only on destruction. Link dispatches this new Ganon, stealing him once more in the darkness. Link unwittingly seals the beast in the dimension parallel to Hyrule this time, sealing him in the dark Lorule. While sealed, bits of Ganon's power link once more. This time, instead of carefully manipulating the actions and everything through a puppet, a random sorcerer named Yuga obtains his power. Yuga uses his power to form a plan with the Lorulian princess Hilda. See, Lorule didn't always used to be such a barren wasteland. Long ago, they too were a prospering land, quite similar to Hyrule. Fortunately, they had gone too far in their version of the imprisoning war. Instead of sealing away the evil realm, they had wished for the Triforce to be destroyed. Yuga plans that if he can obtain the descendants of the 7 sages of the Hyrulean imprisoning war, that is a mouthful, he can break the seal in the Sacred Realm, where they can take the Triforce. Well, how does he know all this? You see, Hilda heard a rumor. Yeah, I don't love it either, but Yuga goes through with his plan. As he takes his first maiden, however, a hero clad in green appears. His name? Link. Throughout his journey to unseal the Triforce, Yuga is thwarted by Link, time and time again, and begins to grow disillusioned with Hilda and her plans. Yuga successfully plots and begins to undo the seal in the Sacred Realm. However, after taking the sage's descendants to Lorule, Link frees them all and confronts Yuga and Hilda. Yuga finally snaps, betraying Hilda and using the sage's power to free and combine himself with Ganon. Yuga Ganon retained some of Yuga's intellect, but most of him was overtaken by the wildness of the feral Ganon. Link and Yuga Ganon do battle, once more ending in Ganon's defeat. At this point, Ganon is sealed, but he is able to retain a small portion of his sanity due to his merge with Yuga. No longer is he the feral beast Ganon that he was when he was resurrected, but he is also not the tactical genius he was as Ganondorf. He's something new. This new semi-intelligent Ganon waits until eventually, due to unknown methods, he is freed again. Ganon begins an assault upon Hyrule, using his newly reclaimed intelligence to bring Hyrule to its knees. Finally, things are turning his way. Finally, Hyrule was his. Or so he thought. Once more, a boy clad in green came to destroy his plans. Once more, Link had come. How? Thousands of years had passed at this point, but this same pest kept harassing him. This was different though. Yet all that time while he was sealed plotting, he knew this day would eventually come. Unfortunately though, in his current state, he could not prepare for the plotting of this version of Link and Zelda. And so, for one final time in this timeline, the legendary hero and the legendary evil do battle. And once more, Ganon falls. He is too weak to defeat Link, and in this timeline, he is finally put to rest. Ganon's story in the Downfall timeline is very interesting. He starts at the highest of highs, defying the god that had cursed him from birth, and winning. But that high gradually turns more sour as we see him lose and get broken down, eventually losing even his prized sanity. His gall and lack of humility do him in time and time again. Ganon's biggest flaw has always been his overconfidence, and in this timeline we see that even before his loss of sanity, Ganon puts so much faith in his planning, never seeing them able to fail. This creates an Ouroboros of Ganon's hubris getting the better of him, leading to his defeat, leading to him creating a new elaborate plan, leading to his hubris and his plans getting the better of him. Ganon never learns, which is what causes him to lose the intellect he values so much. Eventually, once he regains a slight part of that, he falls once more back into his cycle of hubris. Ganon's story here ends in tragedy, but maybe he'll have better luck elsewhere. But he underestimated the young hero. He didn't understand the extent of the power that Link possessed, and so he lost. Ganondorf had lost. As he was sealed, he made a promise. He swore that no matter what, he would one day be free of this prison. Then he would take his revenge. The seal eventually breaks, and Ganondorf is let loose once more. He uses the Triforce of Power to spread a new era of darkness across Hyrule. Without a hero yet, Ganondorf easily takes control. The people of Hyrule pray to the gods, begging for a hero to arise to face him, but no one comes to stop his conquest, and finally, he truly wins. But King Daphnis no Hands in Hyrule has other plans. He wished upon the Triforce for the gods to flood Hyrule, washing away Ganondorf's influence. Fortunately, however, it didn't take. Ganondorf survived, claiming what was left of the Gerudo Valley as his sanctuary, calling it the Forsaken Fortress. He knew because the king had taken such drastic measures that no one could stop him. But just to be sure, he needed to take some steps to ensure his safety. His magic was limited due to his sealing via the Master Sword, but therein lies the key to his machinations. Ganondorf figures that the Master Sword and the Seven Sages were his issue last time, but he figures with Link gone, he won't have to worry about the Master Sword. But its power could still prove an issue. So why not knock out two birds with one stone? He sends two of his minions, Jahala and Mulgara, to butcher the only remaining sages of the era, Fado the Wind Sage and Laruta the Earth Sage. They're successful in their mission, and the Master Sword is depowered, rendering it useless. He also sends one of his most loyal soldiers, the Helmrock King, on a perpetual search for young blonde Hylian girls, ensuring that Princess Zelda is found. He will have her first. Fortunately for him, however, at some point, presumably a few hundred, if not even 1,000 years later, he kidnaps the girl by the name of Ariel. After the Helmrock King's most recent catch, the king discovers an intruder in the fortress and brings him to Ganondorf. Ganondorf recognizes the boy's green clothing and instantly places him as a reincarnation of the hero of time. Link was back. Ganondorf instructs the king to throw the boy out, plans already swirling in his head. Link goes around to the location of the three sacred orbs, attempting to collect them all to achieve the Master Sword. Ganondorf decides to see the setback as an opportunity. He can use this boy to free his full power, and eventually, possibly even reassembling the Triforce. So he allows it. He lets Link go with his journey, confident that he can use this to finally achieve his goal of bringing back his homeland. Finally, Ganondorf realized over these many years that he missed his Hyrule. The battle for control, it was invigorating. He wanted it back, and he would do anything to bring it back. Eventually, Ganondorf feels it, his full power at last. He knows soon Link will come for him, but he has no fear. After all, the Master Sword was nothing more than a thorn in his side at this point. He did have one concern, however. He knew where Link and the Master Sword were, but Princess Zelda was still MIA, an unknown variable. He doesn't like those. But still, he goes on with his schemes. Eventually, everything goes as planned. Link comes to him and kills the Helmrock King. Well, that wasn't a part of his plan, but whatever, he would make do. But aside from some pesky pirates, it all goes to plan. Link comes to him, and Ganondorf prepares to be rid of him. His use has expired. Unexpectedly, though, a young pirate girl attacks him. He believes he's heard of this girl before. Her name was Pietri, Trita, Tetra, something like that. Just another thorn in his side. But to his shock, she is far more. His Triforce of Power reacts to her, its glow matching that of the girl's necklace. He had found her, the last piece of his plan. Princess Zelda. Unfortunately for him, some Ritos sweep in and save the pirate and hero, as the spirit of Ragnaros Island Valu burns down his fortress around him. But it didn't matter. He had found her. Ganondorf's plan was finally ready to enact. Ganondorf finds a haven in his former tower under the sea, and waits. While he waits for Link to reassemble the shattered Triforce of Courage, he sets out to locate Princess Zelda, eventually locating her at the former Hyrule Castle. He waits to take her until Link assembles the full might of the Triforce of Courage, and enacts his final plan. He goes to Hyrule Castle, and takes Zelda, using her as bait for Link to come to him. Link comes to his tower, battling through it until he reaches the Gerudo himself. Link and Ganondorf come face to face at long last. Ganondorf speaks to Link, telling him that he had once desired to conquer Hyrule and rule it under an iron fist, but now none of that mattered. All he wanted was his home, his Gerudo Desert. Link attempts to swing on Ganondorf with a new and improved Master Sword in its full glory, but Ganondorf catches him and extracts the newly reformed Triforce of Courage. Using this as well as his own Triforce of Power and Zelda's Triforce of Wisdom, he reassembles the Triforce in its full glory. This was it. Decades, centuries, all led to this moment. The restoration of Hyrule was imminent. All he needed was to take it. In that moment of hesitation, however, disaster struck for Ganondorf. Once more, King Daphnis Nohansen Hyrule steps forward, wishing upon the Triforce. Instead of wishing for Hyrule's return, he wishes for it to all be washed away. Ganondorf reflects as the last remnants of his home flood around him. All his life he had wanted to rule Hyrule, not see it destroyed. It was his fault. It was all Link's fault. As the unconscious Link begins to stir, Ganondorf focuses on him. His mission was over. He had failed, but he could still end the one who brought about his failures. He does battle with the young hero and princess, the battle concluding with Ganondorf being impaled on his skull, washing away with the remains of his home. Ganondorf's story in the adult timeline is short and tragic. When we first meet him, he just seems like the normal Ganondorf we've become accustomed to at this point, evil and wanting to rule over the Great Sea. But as we get to know, this version of him is quite a tragic tale. At his core, this Ganondorf is just a man who misses his home and wishes to return to it. All Ganondorf truly wants is to be back home in the desert winds he coveted so much. But his seemingly noble mission was once more overshadowed by his ego. Now, we must go back one more time for the final mission. But he underestimated the young hero. He didn't understand the extent of the power that Link possessed, and so he was being detained? How had this happened? Before he could figure it out, he was taken away by the sages. They had somehow learned of his plan. Not somehow. Link. Link had traveled back. He is sentenced to death, and as his sentence is about to be carried out, he incarnates his Triforce of Power. The sages are unable to kill the man because of this development, and decide instead to seal him within the Mirror of Twilight. Once sent through, Ganondorf discovers himself within the Twilight Realm, inhabited by the Twily. Powers greatly weakened from the near-death experience. Ganondorf hides himself from the Twily, biding his time in order to create a plan to regain his power. Centuries pass, and Ganondorf is able to restore most of his power through the pure hatred and anguish of the Twily. He begins to manipulate a Twily named Zant, eventually convincing the Twily to use a portion of his dark power to overthrow the Twilight Princess, Midna. Zant uses Ganondorf's power to leave the Twilight Realm and spreads Twilight across the kingdom of Hyrule. This sets the stage for Ganondorf's grand return and to the conquering of Hyrule. Unfortunately for him, in the village of Ordon, a young boy is taken into the Twilight Realm and becomes a wolf instead of a spirit. Ganondorf pays no mind to this issue until he hears of the Twilight over Ordon village being lifted. Well, this may yet be an issue. Ganondorf instructs Zant to keep tabs on this new threat, but not to act quite yet. He needed to make sure this was what he thought it was. Upon his investigation, Ganondorf makes a very concerning discovery. The strange man who had dispelled the Twilight Realm had a very familiar name, Link. As well as that, this Link figure was working side by side with the former Twilight Princess Midna to return Hyrule to its former light state. Ganondorf trusts Zant to handle this as long as he gives the Foe King more of his power. Ganondorf watches as Link frees the Faron and Eldin regions subsequently. Ganondorf's trust in Zant wanes as Eldin's twilights fall, So the Gerudo instructs the Twilight to handle things personally should Link free the Lanayru region as well. After Link and Midna do so, Zant approaches them, cursing Link into a wolf for good and injuring Midna to the point of death. Ganondorf is overjoyed by this turn, believing his victory to be all but confirmed at this point. Unfortunately for his plans, once more an unforeseen variable pops up. Princess Zelda, who he believed he had dealt with the Twilight, sacrificed her powers of light to restore Midna, and instructed Link to seek the Master Sword, which he had now drawn. Ganondorf readjusts his plans. He has become accustomed to adjusting his plans on the fly after all, and now focuses on locating Princess Zelda's body to extract the Triforce of Wisdom in an attempt to assemble the Triforce and make a wish upon it. He entrusts Zant to handle things on the Link side, believing his power to be more than enough as he searches for Zelda's body. Eventually he finds it and brings her back to Hyrule Castle, which he had been sealed previously. As he settles into his new castle, he receives word that Zant has been killed. Unfortunately for Zant, this has been a part of Ganondorf's plan all along. He knew now that with Zant dead, Link and Midna would go to him and free the last piece of Twilight upon Hyrule. He could use this to bring the three pieces of the Triforce together, and he will finally be able to wish upon it. Link and Midna come to Ganondorf's castle and begin to battle through it. The duo make it to Ganondorf, and the three have a brief conversation. After this, Ganondorf possesses Zelda's body and battles with them. Ganondorf is driven out of the princess's body and takes his Ganon form, only to be bested again. Zelda's life force is restored due to Midna giving up the light she had been given. Ganondorf is done with this nonsense and takes his god form, destroying the castle around the group. Midna teleports Link and Zelda outside of the castle and does battle with Ganondorf, perishing. Finally, something goes right for him. Ganondorf storms Link and Zelda, finally ready to end this tale. He and Link do combat, which Zelda interferes with. The battle ends in Ganondorf's final defeat, being impaled by the Master Sword standing up. He attempts to use the Triforce of power to resurrect himself like he had done with the sages, but when he tries to, Zant appears in front of him, snapping his own neck and denying Ganondorf's resurrection, ending him at last. Ganondorf in the Child Timeline exemplifies a complex blend of ambition, cunning, and tragic hubris. From his survival through the Triforce of Power to his manipulation of Zant and the Twilight, Ganondorf demonstrates patience and opportunism, rebuilding his power through others' despair. His adaptability in the face of challenges such as Link's resistance and Zelda's intervention highlights his tactical brilliance and overconfidence, which blinds him to the resilience of his foes. This arrogance ultimately leads to his downfall, as his reliance on resurrection through the Triforce of Power is severed by Zant's final defiance, turning his manipulative schemes against him. Ganondorf's arc is a testament to his enduring legacy as both a formidable tyrant and a tragic figure undone by his own ambition. In the end, Ganondorf's journey across the Zelda timelines is nothing short of tragic. From his initial rise as a powerful force driven by revenge and ambition, to his eventual downfall by arrogance, his story explores unchecked power and its destructive consequences. In the Downfall timeline, Ganondorf's relentless pursuit of domination is constantly thwarted by his inability to learn from his past failures, ultimately leading to the loss of his intellect and descent into madness. In the adult timeline, we see a more introspective and tragic version of Ganondorf, a man whose desire to restore his homeland is overshadowed by his pride and inability to see beyond his ego. In the Child timeline, his cunning and manipulation once again sets him on a path to ruin, as his overconfidence blinds him to the resilience of those around him. Throughout these timelines, Ganondorf is not just a simple villain, but a complex character. A tyrant who believes his righteousness and the inevitability of his victory, yet each time his hubris leads to his demise. His story serves as a cautionary tale, one about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the pursuit of powers at all costs, and the eventual downfall that follows. Ganondorf's legacy in the Zelda series is one of both terror and tragedy. He is a villain who stands as a testament to the destructive power of pride, but also one who, despite his many defeats, continues to rise again. In this sense, Ganondorf is not just an antagonist, he is a symbol of the endless cycle of ambition and failure. A villain whose greatest enemy is not the hero, but his own inability to change. We see that Ganondorf's arc isn't just a series of villainous acts, it is a deep, tragic exploration of the consequences of power, and the price one must pay for their dreams of conquest. Ganondorf may fall time and time again, but his story, woven into the very fabric of Hyrule's history, reminds us all that some legends truly never end.